That was a snippet of It Could Happen to You. Hi and welcome to Edinburgh Napier Jazz Society's Do You Like Jazz? Today our album of the week is Scenery by Ryo Fukui and it was from 1976.
Yeah, so I've been listening to this a little bit over the course of today and yesterday, and just getting prepared, and it's a very nice album. Very much looking forward to you guys hearing about it and what you have to say about it.
Let's go. So the first track is It Could Happen to You. Let's listen to it in full this time. That was It Could Happen to You, the opening track from the album Scenery. What do you guys say?
What a tune.
Comparing last week's Sarah Vaughan's live at Mr. Kelly's, that's so different.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think it, but this album was recorded 6 years after he began learning to play the piano. So when he was 18, he started learning accordion, and then at 22, he was like, let's scratch that, I'll learn piano, and moved to Tokyo. And then, yeah, over the course of that 6 years, was just learning piano. And apparently I read online that he wasn't very happy with the progress he was making. But I mean, that speaks for itself, that tune. Like, that's very impressive after 6 years.
Well, yeah, because I mean, Sonny, you're learning piano just now. I mean, how long have you been practicing for?
I mean,
Like properly.
properly for like 6 months, a year.
Okay, so you got like five and a half more years, and
And then
we'll hear something like this.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that's good
that's
to
the
know.
plan.
Yeah, listening to the bass player, Satoshi Dempo, just really energetic. Again, so much different from last album. It's just like really hyper in your face, just walking those notes up and down. Quite like, a lot of like time like put into that. You can really feel like the energy going through his fingers and stuff. It's quite intense and in your face. But on the other hand, it's quite a happy tune. Like the actual like listening to the melody of it, it's like quite happy. It's quite cheerful, and it works like really well. And you can definitely hear the kind of like Japanese influences in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is my first time properly listening to Japanese jazz, and I mean after the next track, I'll talk a little bit about the history of that. But yeah, so this is Ryo Fukui on piano, Satoshi Denpo on double bass, and Yoshinori Fukui on drums, who's Ryo's brother, which is pretty cool. So yeah.
All excellent musicians.
Yeah.
You can really hear that. But yeah.
Very different from last week, for sure. This is much more of a boogie,
Yeah.
but we'll move on. So track 2 is I Want to Talk About You. that was track 2. I want to talk to you. Oh no, I want to talk about you. Sorry. What do you guys think about that one?
Yeah, slowing the mood right back down again, really playing with the emotions there. Just like this is kind of like lounge jazz, nice chill bass, a lot slower. Still very full in terms of a song. There's like it doesn't really feel like 3 musicians. It feels a bit bigger, but they're just because they're filling the space. But
Yeah, what struck me was the title of the album is Scenery, and that song was just like, you could just be like looking at the sky on a nice day kind of thing. It's just like really kind of a loungy, soft song.
yeah, do we like where is Ryo from? Is he from Japan, like
He's
Tokyo?
from Japan. I'm not entirely, I can't remember where it was he was born, but he moved to Tokyo, and that's kind of where he developed his playing and stuff. But yeah, so one thing which is interesting about the connection between, and there's 2 connections between this album and the last album we did. We've just got, so he was from Hokkaido, Japan. Theo's just pulled that up for us. Thank you very much. Yeah, there's 2 connections between this album and the last album, the Sarah Vaughan album we listened to. So this second song is by Billy Eskine's band, and for a short while, Sarah Vaughan was part of that. And then also later on in this album, we have Willow Weep For Me, which was on the last album we listened to as well. Which
that was the heavily improvised one, wasn't it? Maybe it wasn't actually. Sorry, I think I'm getting confused.
No, but it was a really good one though.
Yeah.
So that's one interesting connection between these 2 albums, which I didn't realize before. This one was picked by Louis, who's the bass player of the Jazz Society. What does he think about this album?
Well, he loves this album. He's part of the crew which kind of actually, because this had a resurgence on like just YouTube, and you can find the whole album on YouTube just sitting there. And I don't know when he found it, but it basically kind of like came in to everyone's recommended, just as a YouTube algorithm kind of does that sometimes. But yeah, and you listen to it, and then he showed me, and that's how these kind of albums spread. It was really sad actually, because he died in 2016 from like some lymphs things, I don't know, but it was like literally just as like he was getting properly recognized.
Yeah, he was 67, and he released a couple albums in his life, and played at a few jazz bars in Tokyo, but then he started the Slow Boat Jazz Club, and was kind of like a connoisseur of passing the jazz knowledge on, and so he started Slow Boat Jazz Club, and when he died, his wife took it up, which is quite nice. So it didn't shut down. So
that's really beautiful. Yeah.
I'm as far as I'm aware, it's still going, which is really nice.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah, it's nice to see, because it was a real shame to see like such an important musician kind of just like pass on without much recognition in his life, because I'm sure he worked like extremely hard. As 6 years, and he's releasing stuff like that. That doesn't come without dedication and a lot of practice.
Yeah. So before we talk about a little bit of the history of Japanese jazz, Rachel, what did you think of that song?
I liked that one. It was obviously really different from the first one. I think the first one was like a strong opener, like a happy upbeat one. That one was definitely more reflective, like a walk song. You put that on as you're going for a walk. Yeah, it's still very different from last week's though. It's definitely got its own feel.
There's definitely just a difference between, there's not just fast jazz and slow jazz. There's all the nice little bits in between, and this album sits quite well in that. Well, there's one song which goes a bit nuts.
Yeah,
at one point.
One thing that's interesting is that fast jazz, slow jazz thing in this album kind of speaks the same for the history of Japanese jazz. So it was kind of like flitting between growth and oppression. So it was after World War I that Filipino and American jazz was introduced into Japan, and that was obviously from Filipino and American troops. And so in the 1920s this developed a little bit, but amongst the conservative Japanese elite, the American culture was kind of like quite damaging to, like Japanese tradition and stuff. So they kind of put a stop to that. But then in the 1930s, the musicians jazzed up again, and and they took some traditional tunes and kind of like turned them into jazzy tunes, which is quite a good way of kind of like not converting, but
Reimagining it.
reimagining and encouraging the growth of jazz in Japan. So that was really cool. But then obviously during World War II, jazz was considered enemy music, and so it was banned again. But obviously too popular to like be completely banned. So there was like, I think some jazz which was being played, but it was called like light music or something like that, which is kind of interesting.
That's kind of interesting. That kind of reflects on what did they call it in Germany during World War II? It was like the foxtrots and everything. They like rebranded jazz as kind of, if it was too rhythm music, it was too much jazz, too much American, so they banned it, and it was only like the very mild section of jazz that you were allowed. That's interesting. So something
probably
similar.
the same kind of thing. Yeah,
okay.
but then after the war and during the Japanese Allied occupation, a lot of Japanese jazz musicians, picked their stuff back up, and a lot of the American troops living in Japan at the time were keen to kind of hear jazz and stuff. So by the end of the 50s, there was a lot of like native jazz musicians in Japan, and ever since then it's kind of evolved, and this album is kind of like at the end of that period where it was like picking up again. So there was a lot of time after that for other people to kind of pave the way, and I suppose Ryo was one of them.
Yeah, this definitely, it kind of tails on, this goes back to last week as well, about the loft jazz. It kind of entails with the loft jazz again, because it was the 1970s where that kind of resurgence began, and it like jazz wasn't so popular. So I think Ryo was just a bit ahead of his time, I reckon.
Yeah.
It's a shame, but yeah.
Anyway, the next song is 10 minutes long.
Okay,
Nice.
and this next one is called Early Summer. Oh, okay, so that was track 3, Early Summer, which was the last track on side A of the record. So that one was a lot. What do you guys have to say about that one?
Pretty epic.
that was awesome. Just like really well spaced out in terms of like playing. It doesn't feel like a 10-minute song. It feels like a 5-minute song. Like just like it's like nicely spaced out. It feels like condensed, but it feels, it's at the same time it's nicely spaced. I don't know how to really describe it. It's just, it's a brilliant song. I was looking at this quote actually from it was like one of the few sources I could get. It was quoting the drummer. Even when Yoshinori burst into, my opinion, one of the most spectacular drum solos of the past century in Early Summer, it never grates the ear, and there's a unique swing that provides irresistible. It's it's really good. His solo, it doesn't, it's not mental. It doesn't need to be, but it he shows off his chops.
Yeah. I mean, Rachel, you're a drummer. What do you think?
That was cool. Yeah, you can definitely tell he could have done more, like even more, but it was like a good balance. Like he showed off some skill and it was really impressive, but it also stuck to the overall vibe. Well, the vibe of the song kept changing throughout anyway, but it didn't feel out of place. And it wasn't like overpowering, it didn't take over. I just thought it was...
Yeah, during the 40s and 50s and again through to during the 90s as well, drum solos just went absolutely nuts in jazz. And then you also had the 80s with its over the top like poodle hair kind of drum solos as well. But it it just it's the right amount. It's very well seasoned.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. Yeah, I quite liked how it started off. I mean, at the very start, it was a kind of slow, kind of chill piano ballad, and then it just just hit you, and got into that groove, which was really cool. One thing I noticed, not so much now because we don't have headphones on, but when I was listening to it earlier, in terms of the production, I think the bass is panned all the way left, and the drums are pretty far right. But I wanted to ask you, Will, about the production side of things.
Well, yeah, so that's quite often the case with a lot of jazz albums is they'll put the dry signal. When I say dry, no reverb in the left ear or no reverb in the right ear. They'll just put the solid instrument in one ear, and they'll put a reverb tail on the opposite ear. So it kind of it kind of creates the space for that instrument. And that's quite often you'll find that in jazz because they want it to feel like a live experience. They want you to be in the center of it. The singer will always be in the middle, and that's how it goes. But quite often the bass, weirdly enough, which is normally in the center now, you'll find it way over there.
Which I quite like.
I quite like it too. There's sometimes I don't like it too much. In Mingus's Moanin', there's the start horn, it's quite a low brassy horn, and it starts in the far ear. And sometimes I kind of wished it was in the middle. But then sometimes I like it on the right. It's just up to it's up to your own taste, really. I guess it's that's just how they were mixed then.
Yeah, but yeah, Early Summer was written by Hideo Ichikawa. Maybe butchering pronunciation across this album, because but I've not heard of that before, and so that was a really nice kind of way of hearing it, I suppose.
Yeah, well, we'll have to listen to the original, I guess.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the next track is track 4. It's Willow Weep for Me, which we did hear last week on Sarah Vaughan, so excited to see this new, different take on this song. Okay, that was Willow Weep for me. What do you guys have to say?
Well, I feel like maybe contrasting opinions.
Yeah,
Um,
opposing opinions.
I
You go first.
I kind of preferred Sarah Vaughan's version. Theo said at the end of that, I love a cheesy outro. And I kind of feel like it is a little bit cheesy. And it's like a lot more straight ahead than the other version. But there's nothing wrong with that.
All right, I've got you here. Because I much preferred the way that he like was messing with the modes. Like there was some really interesting. That's why I got like my little like piano out and just decided to like look at the notes because I was thinking, hang on, what mode is that in? And it's like, you know, he was really like he was composing. You know, it wasn't just a simple like, oh, I'm covering this song. But yeah.
Anyway, we're getting slightly distracted. We have a band performing in the room next door, so you may hear a little bit of that.
We bet Lizzo never killed anyone.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's all right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we just go on to the next one.
Okay,
Yeah.
next one is
We'll leave it at-
Autumn Leaves.
Yeah, we'll leave it at contrasting opinions.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was Autumn Leaves. Another like one of their finishes there at the end. So what do you guys say about that one?
I mean, the intro and outro, was that Autumn Leaves or was that Pink Panther?
We'll never know.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it sounded like to me. And I think it was so cool because obviously Autumn Leaves is a very well-known tune to start it off and to finish it off with something which is not Autumn Leaves. I thought that was really nice. And it's kind of dark as well. And then you get into the catchy da da da.
Yeah, almost like important to do it so different because it's been covered so many times, so many different ways that every time you cover it, you know you have to change it because it'll just be another Autumn Leaves that gets lost in the pile of leaves.
Yeah, that was a good one. Like Rio really, I think on this one kind of like sits back a little bit, and Satoshi Dempo kind of takes a bit of the limelight with the double bass.
Yeah, he like that solo. I mean, like he really ripped it up, and like
Yeah,
referring back to the melody as all solos should do at some point. He like really he used the melody and kind of bridged off it, and it was that's is kind of like a standard way of doing a solo, and he really made it his own
yeah,
from doing that.
no, definitely.
But what did you think, Rachel?
I don't know. I mean, they always have their kind of full circle in these songs. I'm kind of getting like the intro has a vibe, then it changes and it goes into something in the middle, and then the outro is like the same vibe as the intro. So
Kind of
it's kinda
same
like
as the album as well, a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, that's a
It's
good
got a
point.
whole kind of story, start and a conclusion, but they're clearly linked, self-referential, I guess.
That's a good point. That's a bit like maybe some European jazz. They quite often have intros and outros as well. Maybe he took inspiration from there. Who knows?
Yeah, I wonder. I was watching one of the YouTube documentaries you get about this album, and the person who was speaking was saying that it kind of was a bit like the cycle of the seasons, and I suppose that would also tie in with scenery. Like that kind
Yeah.
of thing, and cycling back on itself.
No, I
So-
completely agree. Yeah, that's so true. I was kind of thinking about that, but I thought that was maybe a bit too cliche. But maybe that's not the case. It's like
Yeah,
Um,
maybe so. I think
Yeah.
Next one.
Okay, the last track is Scenery,
Which
which is
is
the album title. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and
his only original
Yeah.
on this album, so looking forward to it.
Okay, that was the closing track, Scenery. So that was a good, nice round off. What do you guys think?
Yeah, definitely. While I was listening to that, which I hadn't caught on before, but it reminds me a little bit of one of the songs from the Jungle Book, which Will, you kind of were reminded of as well.
Yeah, it's the song "Trust in Me," which is the Snakes song,
Yeah.
which he's captured Mowgli and is trying to. Well, they're all trying to eat him basically, but yeah, it was kind of. It's meant to be like a kind of almost seductive kind of like sleep now. I felt this song was like really, it was quite sad at times. And I thought like, this is
Yeah.
his composition. I was wondering what he was feeling like.
Yeah, it was very like somber and quite melancholic, but not melancholic in like a sickly, like really sad way. It was just kind of like introspectively melancholic, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Which I thought was quite nice. But yeah, what a lovely album. And definitely something that I think grows on you as you listen to it a little bit more. Yeah, and it's interesting to learn about some Japanese jazz as well, because it's something I've never listened to before.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite kind of, there's your kind of, when we say jazz, it's like with heavy air quotations about like, this kind of pop jazz where they just shove a bunch of chords in there and they just slap the jazz label on it. This is kind of, it takes it apart and then it plays it out like, melody, drums, bass. It like, all of it's truly jazz. And if you like said that was like, I don't know, like Oscar Peterson in his later life, you wouldn't be at all surprised. That's like, it's quite Oscar Peterson-esque.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Hymn to Freedom, Oscar Peterson's own composition in Night Train.
Yeah.
And I thought like, looking at the comparisons, the Hymn to Freedom is kind of, it's uplifting, and where this like, scenery, it kind of, it goes down, it's kind of more like down an alleyway kind of song, like track.
Yeah. Rachel, what did you think?
Yeah, that one was definitely much more chill. Like, in comparison to the opening song, so upbeat and like you're bouncing around, you've got this happy start, and then this one was very like calming, closing, coming to an end.
Yeah. So just before we finish up, so when Ryo began playing in America and France, having released his first 2 albums, and during one of the visits he met Barry Harris, and they became really good friends, and Barry Harris was kind of a little bit of a mentor to Ryo. And after Ryo died in 2016, Barry Harris wrote a song dedicated to him, which was called Fukai Aijo, which means deep love in Japanese. And it really kind of encapsulates Ryo's playing and some of the more of his somber songs, which is definitely like Scenery, I suppose, and then some of the songs on his later albums as well. But we just thought it'd be nice to leave you with this dedication to Ryo Fukui. So yeah, we'll leave you with that. Thank you very much for listening. See you next week.